Hi folks, this is Will at LR Workshop and welcome to the top drawer of my toolbox. Probably the most used drawer in the entire box, as it should be. And it's a bit of a mess, really. And in this video I'm going to be fitting shadow foam into this top drawer so I can lay all these tools out nice and straight and anally and all nicely fitting like a trooper. The reason being is I've just got a nice lovely new set of Halford's Advanced Professional 1/2 inch drive sockets, all the way from 10mm up to 34, and whereas before I've just had like odds and sods and 1/8 or 3/8 sorry drive, and I don't think they're quite beefy enough. So what better way to celebrate getting a new bunch of sockets than to absolutely totally sort out my toolbox forever with shadow foam. And then this is the end result that's coming up in this video. This is as far as I'm going to go. I've still got all this to do. I'm not totally decided on that. But what's coming up is the unadulterated, pure, unedited video of me learning how to cut this stuff. It's not something I've done. I've not done anything like this before, actually. And I kind of realised that I don't have as much experience with a scalpel as I thought I did. So at the start, things were a little bit dodgy as I'm working around this area. But I do get better, honest. And it's nice to be able to prove that we are separate from the animal kingdom. So I'm just an average guy attempting this. So at the end of the video, I'm going to highlight some of my key learning points from this. So if you want to jump ahead to that, and that's fine, the link's in the description. Other than that, have a look at me cutting this lot. Actually, the video only goes up to this point. I thought I'd got it down by this point, and then I'll talk about this at the end. Okay, so there's the piece. I guess that's the first cut. I'm now learning what the material's like. It's a bit rough. That'll be my technique, but I think it got a bit dodgy in the middle here. It's gone a bit off. And definitely having a sharp blade, very, very sharp blade would help. So what did I learn from this whole experience? Well, firstly, it might be the bleeding obvious, but you've got to make sure your scalpel is sharp. Now, this is the scalpel I started with. This is what I had as a kid, actually, and I just thought, oh, it's a scalpel. It'd be all right. No, actually, first I started with a Stanley knife, and I thought, oh, it's not sharp enough, I'll go to a scalpel. Started with this one, and the tip snapped off, and it's not sharp. So then I bought one of these on Amazon, and the difference is night and day. This thing cut it like butter. Absolutely, just completely. So definitely make sure you got a brand new scalpel, because actually by the time I did all this and got to about here, it was starting to go blunt. So then I switched over to this blade, and this was a bit trickier. This one required some sort of thin slicing motions, because I thought that, you know, I just assumed with a scalpel you would just put the scalpel in, make a cut, one nice fat cut, and it would work. But actually a scalpel works better if you do lots of thin cuts, taking a little bit at a time, which makes sense actually if you've ever watched like surgery with surgeons. That's kind of what they do. I guess my only experience with scalpels before this was cutting models out of sprues, and you just go chunk and cut it out. So I realised I had a bit to learn about scalpels in that point of view. The only other problem with this scalpel is that it's very difficult to cut tall objects vertically because of the fat sides on this one. So ideally you'd get a thin flat blade or a flat handled scalpel, which is exactly what they show in the shadow foam video actually. So it gets quite hard around these kind of areas because it doesn't go in vertically, you've got to come in from the side, so you end up not following the line exactly. I found that large objects were actually harder to cut than small objects. This might be because the blade wasn't flat, but this one's pretty poor actually. I'm not very pleased with that one, whereas some of these are absolutely to the point. So that was surprising. Small objects are easier than large objects, except for these ones, these are quite neat. It's quite neat. Maybe it's just sockets that are really difficult. I found that the foam tears quite easily, quite smoothly, which is nice. I guess that's a good property of the foam. But I did find that if you need to get like extra bits out, you give it a slice and then just pluck it with your fingers. It's a lot easier to pluck with your fingers than it is to try and cut like the sections out the bottom, like here, for example, a hole. Just go and cut in around there and then just pluck it out with your fingers. It's a lot easier to do that. And when you're fitting this, if you want to know which bits to cut, then you can put the object in, press down, and then take the object off, and where it rebounds, that's where you've got to cut to try and get the object a bit lower. The other thing is that I found you cannot trim the edge after you've cut the shape out, which means you've got to get it right first time. Some of these, it was down here, I tried to trim the edge and it doesn't really work. You've just got to do it once in the first attempt, which kind of proves why you really need a really sharp blade in the first place, because you just want to cut once. It's also probably worth mentioning that you won't be able to get things millimetre accurate. So if you like things really scientifically laid out, accurate, you may be a little bit disappointed, but you can get it very neat. I mean, I used a straight edge to separate these rows. I didn't I didn't go as far as getting the spacing all accurate, but what I did do was just space it generally along the first row, and then I did this one with the spacing, did this one, and then I did this one, and then I kind of gauged these last four in here, and then I would do work from the outside in, and kind of gauge a general kind of spacing so that at least they would kind of line up on the edge here, and it would look kind of relatively neat. But these sockets don't all fit square, and you know, they all move a little bit, so you're not going to get razor sharp edges. But I didn't use a straight edge on this, and it kind of shows actually. Doesn't quite line up there, so I went to it for these, and it worked really well actually. As I say, not millimetre perfect, but a few millimetre perfect. And then cutting finger holes, this was the first finger hole I did, and it's a bit wonky. I tried to go freeform, and I think freeform doesn't really work on this, unless you're a sculptor or an artist and you've got just like the ultimate poise in your fingertips, you may be okay. But I used a socket on the next one over here. I used a socket on here. It was this one. There's a template. And I lined it up right, as you can see there, but it still kind of came out a bit wonky on the side. So, and that's what I mean about you can't cut this afterwards. I had a go at this, but you cannot cut this after the first cut. So that's a bit annoying, but so be it. See, it's a little bit wonky, but it's good to have some finger holes in there. It really helps, actually. Now, shadow foam is quite expensive stuff. This sheet was about 25 quid, and it's done this, plus there's probably a bit extra, so you could do 1.5 these Halfords toolboxes, tool chests. It took me a long time to get around to buying this, because I thought, 25 quid for a bit of foam? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. And I did more research, and I kind of didn't really find anything else, actually. There's not many other products available. So probably from first deciding I wanted to do this and then actually buying it was about 6 months. And I'm glad I did, actually. It does fit very well in the width-ways. It fits very well in the drawer. There's only like a finger gap down the edge, which is perfectly acceptable. And overall, I think it's actually quite a good product. It does work very well. I think you just need to know how to use it properly. And I think hopefully you've gained some tips from my learning points on this video. You can see that it's actually kind of made to do the job. It does cut very easily, very nicely when you've got a sharp scalpel. It does, if you use the technique of coming in at an angle from the side, you end up with this nice sort of grooved chunk, slanted chunk that you can just peel out of the hole quite nicely. It tears quite nicely. I think you just got to expect that the first ones you start off, if you've never done anything like this before, the first ones you start with are probably not going to be that great. But overall, I'm very pleased with the outcome. And look at this, that's a lot more organised. I've just got to do the rest of the toolbox now. I need to work out exactly what I'm going to put where. But I hope this video was useful to you. If you're thinking about buying some shadow foam, then I would recommend it. And good luck in your own scalpel adventures. Bye for now.